Hello, hi, it's Catherine North, and I'm here to tell you some stories about some of the more embarrassing detours I've taken in my road to being a creative person, even one might say a working artist. Hello, if we're new to each other, it's nice to meet you. If you're watching this, probably we go way back. So hello, dear old friend, kindred spirit. I am coming to you from my office slash studio slash bedroom here in my little cottage in the forest. You're going to hear my roosters because nothing will shut those suckers up. And I'm just here to tell you some stories. So settle in, get comfy. If you want to like snuggle up with a blanket and a cup of something warm, fabulous. If you're making dinner, also perfect. I'm going to tell you 5 stories today. And these are 5 really stupid, really quite embarrassing things that I let stop me from creating. And I had to do a little coaching on myself even to come to that title, because when I first typed it out, I wrote 5 embarrassingly stupid things that stopped me from creating. And then I was like, wait, I'm like a life coach. I think I've heard something about this. And I realized that I was giving way too much power to these totally asinine things, and I was the one who let those things stop me. And I want to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen to you. So here we go. 5 things that I let stop me from creating that I hope you will not let stop you. And of course, obviously, I'm making this video because I hope it will encourage you to sign up for my brand new program, Make Art, Choose Joy. It's going to be amazing. It's 7 months long. It's going to be everything that I have learned and gleaned and gathered and practiced and experimented with over, 20 years now? I've been trying to turn myself into an artist. So of course, I hope you're going to join me. But whether you're interested, whether it speaks to you or not, whether it feels like it's the right thing, don't let that stop you from just taking a little time with me, because I think you're going to like these stories, and I think that you may, find them helpful, but also I think you might recognize some of them. So here we go. Thing number 1, I let other people's opinions and feedback stop me from making more art. Now, here is the thing. The people whose opinions I let stop me had no business giving me any advice. No business. They were not successful artists. They were not even particularly happy people. You may have found in your life that some of the most painful, advice and criticism and unasked for, nudges come from people who, when you really stop and think about it, you actually don't even respect. You don't even really like the life that they have created for themselves, which is probably why they feel like they have to go around poking holes in other people's dreams. And yet somehow, oh my gosh, our hearts, they are so tender. And when people poke at us, it's so hard not to let ourselves get deflated. And I, maybe like you, let people poke holes in some of my dearest dreams. I remember in particular one person who I really, frankly, did not like. I didn't like this person. They were not a kind person. They were not a good person. They were not a happy person. I remember them saying to me something about how, there's really no point in writing a memoir anyway, unless you're already rich and famous. It would really be kind of pointless and also a little bit embarrassing. Oh my God, that word embarrassing. It got right to the heart of all my insecurities. Every little piece of me that was like, who do I think I am? What do I think I'm doing? What makes me think I have the right or the ability to even do this? With that word embarrassing, that person got right to my tenderest bits. And you know what? It wasn't their fault. They were just out there trying to survive in their own kind of unpleasant way. It was my fault. I should have guarded my heart. I should have never trusted this person with my little tiny baby dreams. I should have put them in a beautiful greenhouse and protected them. I should have given them water and compost and and shielded them from the elements until they were strong enough to survive on their own. That was my fault. I took this tiny little baby, tender seedling of a hope, of a dream. And it's like I like brought it to this, person who was like a furnace of criticism and negativity, and was like, you want to blow on this a little bit for me? And then when it wilted and shriveled and fried, I was so sad. And looking back, I kind of can't believe that I let just some casual offhand comment by someone push me so far astray. But I did. And I have to have compassion on that version of myself too, because she was also just doing the best that she could. She was trying to figure out how to do it. And so she was looking around, and she didn't always make great choices in terms of who she showed her tenderest self to. Guess what? I make much better choices now, much better choices. But sometimes we go to someone who we think is safe, someone who we trust, someone who frankly should know better. Maybe it's a mentor or a teacher or an established artist. Maybe it's a coach or therapist or, I don't know, your great Aunt Sue. For whatever reason, let's say that you go to someone who you really think is going to be a safe person for you. I've done this several times in my life. And sometimes you're going to get great feedback. I hope you only ever always get great feedback, but probably you won't, because people are a mess. We're just a mess. So one time I had created a piece of writing, which first of all was like the most heroic, brave, amazing thing I had ever done. The fact that I started and then worked on and then actually finished a piece of writing, you know what? For me, that was like climbing Mount Everest, for all kinds of reasons that I'll go into another time. But the fact that I had even done that was so huge and so brave. And if I could go back to that me, I just want to ring all the bells and just celebrate. It was such a big deal. And I got some feedback back from this person that was bad. It was bad feedback. And what I mean is not that the person's feedback was so negative, although it was. I mean that it was poorly crafted, extremely unhelpful feedback. What this person told me was basically that my piece of writing was fine. It was okay. It wasn't great. And they really couldn't give me any concrete reasons that it wasn't good. And they couldn't actually tell me what I could do to make it any better. It just, it just didn't cut it. Okay, as a grown-up and a parent and a coach, this feedback now makes my blood boil. Oh my gosh, it's total bullshit, okay? Complete bullshit. Here's how you know if you get good feedback. Even if the feedback is this is terrible, it's an absolute mess, it's a total disaster, because here's what they will say next. The feedback will say, and here's what you can do to fix it. Here's how you can make it better. Here are the specific places and reasons why it's weak. And so here's what you would need to do in order to make it better. And sometimes that feedback feels devastating because it's go back to the beginning and write a whole new draft, or scrap this whole thing and start over. Sometimes that feedback can feel really hard to hear, but here's the hallmark of good feedback. Even if it's, bad, even if it's negative feedback, the hallmark of good feedback is that it always gives you a sense of relief and a sense of forward momentum, because it tells you, oh, that's why this didn't work. That's why it wasn't a home run. I can see that's where I missed the mark. That's where it faltered. That's where something wasn't solid enough. Okay, I can see it. And then it gives you a sense of momentum because you're I see how I could do it better. I see how maybe I can make this piece better. Or maybe it's I can see that the next time I do this, this is what I would do differently. And then it will be so much better. And so good feedback, no matter how devastating it may be, it gives you a sense of relief and a sense of forward momentum. So if you get feedback, I don't care if it's from Margaret Atwood herself, although I'm sure she would never do that because she seems like a very wonderful person. Anyway, I don't care if it's the world's most respected literature professor or the most famous artist or your favorite photographer or, you know, I don't know, your favorite composer, if they give you feedback that makes you feel stupid for having tried in the first place, and like probably you should never try again, I want you to promise me with a sacred bond that you won't listen to it. Don't listen to it. It's bullshit. It's not even real. There's something going on in them. There's something in their heart or soul or spirit or past that got twisted or traumatized. We don't know. It doesn't matter. Your job, okay, is to take people's opinions, their feedback, anything that makes you feel stupid for having tried and like you probably shouldn't try again, and I want you to burn it, okay? You can do it in a fire with like, you know, I don't know, sage and herbs and witchcraft and beautiful magic if you want to, or you can just be like, whatever works for you, okay? Don't do what I did, which is I let other people's opinions and bad feedback stop me from making work. Okay, here's number 2. This is the one that I feel so embarrassed to tell you, okay? But it's real, and so I'm gonna tell you. Thing number 2 that I let stop me from making the creative work that is mine to make is this idea that if you're a creative person, but in particular a writer, which is what I am, you have to wake up early. You have to wake up early. You have to wake up at like 4 in the morning. I cannot tell you, there are like thousands of interviews with artists out there who talk about that moment of quiet before the world awakes. And they sneak off to their laptop or their computer and they write in the quiet of the dawn. I think that is so lovely. And if you are a morning person and you are already making art, you know, in the wee small hours, fabulous. And guess what? I am never in my whole life gonna do that. I'm never gonna do that. I have been trying since I was like 3 to become a morning person because the world really likes morning people and they really reward morning people. And everything is easier if you have to go to school or have a job, right? Or a child. If you can turn yourself into a morning person. So I am 45, I'm almost 46. I have been trying to turn myself into a morning person my whole life and I give up. I finally give up. It's not gonna happen. That's not when I'm gonna do my writing, okay? And maybe for you, the morning thing isn't the thing, but there's some detail about how it's supposed to work. Like, well, artists have to wear long flowy clothes, or artists have to really like, you know, dark, scary, melancholy photos of themselves, or they have to make, you know, modern pieces made of neon with sarcastic things, and you really like beautiful things painted in watercolor that make you feel soft inside, right? Whatever it is, if there's some detail about how you have to do it, how it's supposed to happen, right? Maybe you're like, well, I'm not Elizabeth Gilbert. I can't go off to an ashram for 3 months, let alone Italy and Indonesia too. Whatever this, you know, well, I don't know how to like, I don't have a studio. I don't have this big, you know, open white space where I can paint for hours and hours and hours and leave all my stuff around because I've got 24 children and a dog. Whatever this idea is about how it has to happen, throw it away. You're you, I'm me. We get to do things however the hell we want. In my program, I'm going to tell you exactly how I figured out how to make art. It looks nothing like getting up early in the morning. It's a combination of tiny micro habits and then big doses of concentrated work. I've never heard anybody else who does it like this, and that's okay because it works for me. And I'm going to help you figure out not how to do it like I do it, but how to experiment until you find what works for you. It sounds so silly when I say it out loud, but truly this idea that if I was going to be a real writer, I had to wake up early. Oh my gosh, how many years of my life did it steal? So many. All right, thing number 3 that I let stop me was how easily things came to people I knew. And some of these people were real life friends, people who I knew in real life, who I watched, you know, they got that phone call that we're not supposed to want. Right? But of course, we're all hoping for. Or someone walked up to them and approached them and asked them if they wanted to do something, or someone made an introduction that changed their life. They got offered the deal or the residency or the gallery or, the audition of a lifetime. And then some people were like, they didn't have that magic break, but they did the work and they put in some time and a little bit of effort, and poof, things just happened for them. And some of those people were real, like I said, but I also fell into this terrible trap, which some people, we're not naming names, me, maybe you, fall into, of watching how easily things happen out there in the world of hype. So I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about Instagram, I'm talking about self-congratulatory press author interviews that authors do, which is fine. But that hype was not actually real. And more importantly, it had nothing to do with me, right? I used this idea I had that, first of all, was probably not even accurate, okay? Because as I have coached like hundreds of amazing, successful, really incredible people for the last 10 years, I learned that what you see on the outside is never everything that's happening on the inside. So all those people who had like overnight success, they probably worked for it for 10 years. And everyone for whom things came easily, you don't know what they had to give up or what was taken from them in order for that to happen. So I've learned that, first of all, what we see on the outside is never the whole story. But also, let's say that it happened that way for someone. Let's say that someone sat down and they composed the next great opus. Let's say that they made a little ditty and they put it on social media, and then the next thing you know, I don't know, Greta Gerwig called and now it's going to be in a great big movie. Let's say that happened for someone, that crazy unicorn wild thing that happens sometimes. Let's say it happened. So what? Who cares? It has nothing to do with us. That has nothing to do with me. There's this really toxic myth of things showing up, and especially for women, that you're supposed to have just been sitting around minding your own business, being humble, not having big ambitious dreams, certainly not working toward them. Oh my goodness, how unseemly. And then poof, the universe just shows up in the form of a fairy godmother or a talent scout or whatever. And you're just there going, oh my goodness, I never even dreamed of such a thing. It's such a gross, outdated, totally toxic myth. And yet I think that it has more power over us than we sometimes would like to think. The truth is that it's not about whether it comes easily or even if it comes at all. It's about if I want it. Do I want to be a writer? Okay, then that's it. That's my permission slip. Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to make something? Whether that's a play or music or a painting or a sculpture or an installation piece that I might not even understand. Do you want to make something? Okay, then that is your signpost. I also have a whole beef with the world of manifesting and law of attraction, because it can become a very self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's too easy, if you are trying to make something happen and it's not happening, to think, well, the universe just might not want that for me. And I just think that that is gross and totally untrue. So, what happens for other people is none of your business. Your only business is if your soul is trying to get your attention, if your soul longs to make something, it's your job to make it. That's it. It's so simple. Oh my gosh, it's taken me like 2 decades to figure this out. All right, I'm hoping to save you a little time. All right. Thing number 4 was that I compared myself, my little tiny baby attempts at making work, and also the me who was making the work. I was comparing myself to people at the top of their game. And we don't do this in other areas of life. We don't take some kid who's learning to play tennis, or even adult who's learning to play tennis for the first time, and expect them to show up the way Serena Williams shows up, right? That's absurd. Of course not. We never would expect that. And yet somehow in art, we have this strange idea that you're supposed to just sit down one day and the art will just flow. The muse will come, the genius will come to you, and it will just flow out of you. And like, yeah, you might do one or two, edits, you might tweak it a little bit, but basically that's how art works. And that's how artists are created. They are born, not made. They certainly don't have the chutzpah to make themselves out of sheer desire. And it's so absurd. And also, it doesn't make any sense. If you were trying to, let's say you want to build a house, brand new house out of nothing, and all you have is this blank piece of ground, and you're looking at Instagram and you're watching all these people talk about like paint colors and countertops and cabinet finishes. If you are starting with a blank piece of ground, the first thing you need to do to get to that place where you get to pick, the fun stuff, picking cabinet fronts and picking colors, is not paint colors and cabinets. It's infrastructure. It's like you gotta go hire a digger to go dig a hole in the ground. And then you have to do really unsexy things like get electricity to it and deal with plumbing and zoning. And then you're gonna like pour concrete. It's the absolute opposite of something that's beautiful and fun and design forward. But that's what we do when we are supposed to be like digging the ground, making a foundation, pouring concrete. Instead, sometimes we're like faffing around thinking that we're supposed to be choosing paint colors. And then we wonder, A, why it doesn't work, and B, why we're such failures. All right? Don't do this. Don't do this. We're going to start at the beginning. You have to start at the beginning, but it's so hard to find someone who will show you how to start at the beginning, which is why I made this program, because, oh my gosh, I needed it so badly. I've basically needed it for like the last 20 years. And so here it is, I made it. You have to start at the very beginning. You don't start by like serving at Wimbledon. You start by like, I don't really know anything about tennis. You start by like learning to bounce the ball, right? In some ways it looks like you're going backward. And this is especially confusing, by the way, this is a sidebar, for those of you who are already making creative work, especially if you are making paid creative work. So if you're like an influencer, or you bring a lot of creativity to your marketing, or I don't know, you make beautiful art for your commercial clients, right? You work at an agency or something. If you're already using your creativity, but it's kind of in service of something else, there's nothing wrong with that. That's beautiful and wonderful. But if you're already doing that, when you go to access that creativity for your own work, for work that is just the thing that is trying to come through, that won't leave you alone, it can feel like you're going backward because you're already performing at a certain level over here. And instead, you have to go back and you have to like learn to bounce the tennis ball again. You have to think about things like, I don't know, laying pipe. So it's a very counterintuitive process, and I hope you will try it because it will change everything. All right, the fifth thing that I let stop me, this is in some ways the most subtle, but also the most pernicious, was I had this idea that if I was supposed to be an artist, I would already be making art. It would have happened already. It would have probably happened in my 20s, for sure in my 30s. And that there would just be a certain sense of inevitability. That the very fact that I wasn't making the art I wanted to make was proof that I wasn't supposed to make art in the first place. And it became this like horrible spiral where the more I didn't make art, the more it was proof that I wasn't supposed to be making art. And I was so embarrassing for even wanting to or thinking that I could. The artists I know, and I have had the honor, truly the honor, of getting to watch some really creative, really amazing people up close and behind the scenes. They take the art of coming to their art so seriously. Most of them don't just sit down and it all flows. They often have quite complicated rituals. They have certain contracts that they've made with themselves. They have sometimes a whole like web of habits that supports the art that they make. They nourish themselves really deliberately in certain ways so that they have the juice to bring to their art. And they all talk about how many moments they had when it would have been easier or more logical or made more sense to just stop, when there really was not that external evidence and validation that they were supposed to be making art because they were art. But it's not a thing that I've really heard talked about a lot. And even though I read, I think, really every book on creativity that has ever been written, this is something that I didn't really find addressed. And so you have to kind of go down to a very tender place in yourself. You have to work a little bit of alchemy on your own heart to disbelieve that lie that says that if you were supposed to, you already would be. It takes so much courage and so much, I can't even talk about it without getting shaky. It takes so much courage and so much glory to say, I want to do this and I'm going to try to do it just because I want to. I think it's maybe the most beautiful thing in the whole world. And if you have something in you that you want to make, maybe it's something really specific. I had a particular book, my memoir, burning a hole inside me for years. It was like I was pregnant and I was had the bowling ball of the baby between my legs. Sorry, sort of graphic image, but I mean, birth is beautiful. Anywho, maybe it's a specific project, or maybe you don't even know what it is, which is even more maddening, but you're I think that there's something, but I don't even know what it is. So where am I even supposed to start? Should I go buy a pottery wheel? Should I take singing lessons? I don't know. I just had this feeling that there's something that wants to come through. I now think that if you want to make something, it's because you can and you're supposed to, and that's it. It's that simple. I finally was able to make art because it got painful enough not making art. And I hope that it doesn't have to be like that for you. It turns out that not only was there a huge amount of relief in finally just making the work that I had wanted to make all along, but there was joy. There was joy. And that's where I got the title of this program from. It was actually my mantra for this year, for 2022. Make art, choose joy. And it was such a powerful one, and it sustained me so much. It was I could hear it like a heartbeat. And I realized that that was what I wanted to name this program, because that's what I want for you. If you want to make art, I want you to make it. But you have to choose to do it. And when you choose to make your art, you're also choosing joy. Of course, I hope you will join me for my program. I truly think that it's one of the very best things I've ever made, and I am drawing on everything else I've ever created to make this as effective and as easy and as nourishing and as beautiful as possible. If this isn't the right thing for you, that's okay. Traveling mercies. Keep me posted. But promise me that you won't let bullshit stop you from making the work that is yours to make. Okay? Promise me.